I left with that 207.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to House Appropriations. It's just after 2 p.m. We're continuing discussions on the fiscal year 26 budget, and we are joined this afternoon by Commissioner Basigi to talk about the classification and compensation modernization project. So, Commissioner, take it away.
Hello, Beth Fastige, the Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources, and I really appreciate you having me in this afternoon to talk about our classification and compensation modernization project. Key aspects of a classification and compensation system are you want to have internal consistency and equity. So we want to maintain a structured hierarchy within the organization, defining clear job classifications, ensuring consistency and compensation based on the level of responsibility, experience, and qualifications. You want equity and fairness. That's to ensure fair compensation across similar roles and responsibilities, mitigating potential biases or inequities within the organization. We're looking for external competitiveness, aligning pay levels with the relevant labor market so that we can attract and retain a qualified, talented workforce. Budget management to control and manage organizational costs by designing compensation structures that balance the need to be competitive in the market with the need to manage our financial resources effectively. And motivation and performance that will align employee behavior and performance with organizational goals by providing incentives and rewards for high performance, fostering motivation and productivity among employees. So of those, we are falling short in all of these areas. But it's not because our staff don't care or are not working hard. They do care and they work very hard. It's because the tools that are available to us are inadequate and or outdated. So that's why moving forward with the classification compensation modernization project is critical now. We can't afford to fall any further behind. I'll address some of the specific indicators of the problems in each of these areas. But first, I want to take a quick look at the core component of this process, which is the Willis point factor system. The state of Vermont has used a point factor tools for job evaluation since the 1960s. And our current tool is Willis Position Management. Point factor is one type of job evaluation tool. Job evaluation or position management tools assess the relative content of different job roles within the organization. And point factor evaluations are quantitative tools that define factors and result in numeric scores based on established criteria. Our first point system. Yep.
But we've been using Willis for a long time.
Yes. If you turn to page 4, we've been using a point factor system since the 1960s. That was called the Hayes system. And in 1984, we deemed that system outdated. And following a national-wide search, we brought in the Willis system to replace Hay. A committee with classification analysts review and rate position description forms. The Willis system went into effect in 1986. And then in 1993, we got a Willis refresher and updates were made to the system. And in the late 1990s, Norman Willis and Associates closed business and our Willis tool is unsupported. So we've had an unsupported Willis tool for, a long time.
That saying there's no updates to like point system factors.
Right.
Might be relevant.
We have had no updates since the 1990s. So it's been it's about 30 years.
What other states use this system today?
I don't believe any other states are using Willis. They may have used, it's not, if they are, they're in the same position as us. But in the past, since I've been in this role 8 years, I've seen classification and compensation systems have been issues across states, and I've seen states leapfrog way ahead of Vermont. Most states are. So we are very much lagging in this area. We're very much lagging, yeah. So our tool is unsupported. It's not a system. It's not a computer system. It's like a user manual that you look up and that tells you how to rate the points, and there's training and it works and it does provide a comparison, but things like, the IT world has changed since the 1990s for sure. We've just done a classification review for law enforcement. We called in all the sworn law enforcement positions and reviewed those. And it's not designed for law enforcement. It's been known that it hasn't been, but it was really apparent in this review. So it is definitely time for something new. As I mentioned, I'm just moving to slide 5. The system is outdated and unsupported. The state has far too many job classes for the employee population, one of the highest job classes per employees of any other state. So we have a ratio of 4.2 employees for every job class with over 1,900 job classes. And that's a 6.2 increase since fiscal year 23. So I updated this presentation. And since in fiscal year 23, we had about 1,800 and now we have 1,900. So that number of classifications continues to go up. Average for other states is about 15 employees per job class. Ideally, we'd be at about 800 to 1,000 job classes.
Well,
So can you just pause for a second? Just give me and give us and some examples here. So job classification, to me, and I'm not a state employee, so this could be, I could be, if I worked at state park, I could be state park cashier 1, state park cashier 2, and those are justifications based on what? Experience, or is that what you're talking about?
Right, so it would be, let's say, the cashier 1, 2, and 3. So those would be different levels based on your work experience, the job conditions, how much you need to know to be able to perform the job at that level.
So how would that get reduced? And I'm not arguing that you need to have 2,000 job classifications, but how would that get reduced under, or maybe there's an answer somewhere later on in the.
Not really, because I'm not getting into the specifics of the system, but we don't have, we don't have, for example, in my department, I might have a couple of different administrative assistants, and they might be called Human Resources Administrative Assistant 1, 2, and 3. Department of Labor may have 3 more job classes. Department of Labor Assistant 1, 2, and 3. They're really, those types of jobs should be standardized across state government. If they're administrative type work, it's, how much, what skills do you need to do each level of work? But we don't need to have hundreds of descriptions for administrative work. And that all is associated, typically you would associate with the job families, and job families you would have there's going to be an administrative series. There might be an engineering series. There might be a law enforcement series, but all of those would be in different job families, and you're kind of rating the job families against each other. We don't do that. We don't do any of that.
Job families, and so are we pulling in, when you reclassify these employees, are we pulling in union contracts? Are we pulling in pay scales? Are we pulling in,
Right.
if there's this much change, are there winners and losers, and who are the losers?
In this system, we expect a lot of change, and we don't expect there to be any losers, only winners. And I can explain that as well. But so the Willis Systems looks in jobs in isolation. So there can be unintended impacts currently now in the same occupational or within the same department, leading to a lack of pay parity. So I, as an employee, have the ability to say, this job description isn't correct for me. I'm going to rewrite my own job description and I'm going to submit it for reclassification. That's all part of our collective bargaining group. Employees have that right. When it's a group of employees or a management team that wants to do a whole group, we call that a class review. But doing a job, one job within the department and not leveling that with all the other jobs in the department could create imbalance because one person is being done at one time and then other people are being done at different times. So you can have this kind of leapfrogging effect, and you can have that competition between departments. We had this issue recently with law enforcement where the law enforcement in some departments where also were law enforcement officers did a reclass, but then it wasn't done in all the other ones. So then the other ones did one and they went out, and the other ones did it and they went up. So it's always trying to play catch up. In general, stakeholders, including our union partners, generally dislike our current system and processes. Decisions, though arrived objectively by trained analysts, may have the appearance of being subjective. So that's an issue. These are kind of the issues with our current system. More issues, we have unpredictable budgetary implications. So for fiscal year 2023, the estimated annual cost of class reviews was over $7 million. You can look in the workforce report for more information on the class reviews on tables 47 and 49. But as I said, the current system leads to unpredictable budgetary implications. For example, the estimated annualized cost review for class reviews under this system was in fiscal year 19, it was 5.7 million. Fiscal year 20, 3.4 million. Fiscal year 21, 2.1 million. Fiscal year 22, 6.3 million. Fiscal year 23, 7.1 million, and fiscal year 24, 5.4 million. So,
Can we stop right there?
Yeah.
Couple questions. So back in the prior page, you said we average one position for every 4 employees.
Yep.
Is that typical if you looked at other states that assume similar makeup of types of jobs?
No,
We lower or
or
higher?
higher. Average for other states is about one class of 15 employees per job class.
15.
15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Additionally, you mentioned your vision going ahead, there would be no loser.
And I can explain why that would be.
Okay, I mean.
Yeah.
That's great. We're all on the same page. We don't want any losers.
Right.
But does that mean there's a lot of people winning that it's going to cost us a lot more money?
Right. So yeah, so related to the implementation, I can talk about that. And that is several years out where we would be implementing a new system. And depending on the cost of the implementation would likely, so in the end, we need to bargain benefits, pay, and working conditions. So this component, when it comes out at the end, it impacts employees' pay. So if we come up with new pay charts and new pay scales and how we want to move employees through that pay, we will need to bargain that. If in bargaining that, it comes to, first of all, when you bargain something, there's a budget and you can't go beyond it. So if we can't implement the whole thing, if we need to implement that in stages, or if we can't get the union to agree to what we want to do, then we have to keep going back to the negotiating table. But I would be surprised in a state, in an environment where we have collective bargaining, that our labor partners are going to bargain where somebody would get a pay cut as a part of this implementation.
I understand.
Yeah.
That's their role.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, there's been proposals over the years for example, to do a statewide teacher's contract.
Right.
And it may make sense on a lot of different levels until, well, that means everybody's got to be at, let's say, South Burlington, just to pick on them as the highest in the state. That means everybody's got to go up to their level.
Right.
And what does that cost?
And that's,
So I don't know what, I'm just
Right, and
making this up, but.
exactly.
that's
So-
always a roadblock.
So that would be the implementation of new pay charts are always going to be, are a challenge, can be a challenge. We implemented a new pay chart and pay movement this year for the corrections bargaining unit. And it was expensive. However, we were paying that amount already in overtime because we can't fill all the positions. So we already were doing things with side letters related to pay to be able to attract and retain employees anyway. So one of the things that a new system would have in place would hopefully be a market component there as well.
You mentioned, you just listed off, prior to Representative Harrison's session, the $7 million for fiscal year 23 and going years back. What does that mean? What is the estimated annual cost? Is that if I started working a certain time of year, but it was my time to get, a job review? Is that part of this? Is that?
No, this is not.
What does it mean to have this classification review system? You say you have over 1,000, to cost $7 million. I don't understand what that is.
Yeah, so the way we do it now, which is not best practice, is it's done based on demand. So if somebody wants it done, or the union wants it done, or management wants it done, that work comes to us rather than being done on more of a systematic way. So the work is difficult to manage when how much is going to come in, how much volume of work you're going to get in those areas. And you should be reviewing them periodically every, 5 to certain years to make sure that they're still right and still how this job compares with their peers, but the fact that we have so many, and I can kind of move a little forward with that and talk about other issues related to that, but one of the other negative impacts we've had is severe compression in the range. So over 90% of our job classes are assigned to pay grade 21 to pay grade 30, and that's 10 of our 28 available pay grades. So as the system has evolved and this process has been going through, the evolution is people keep pushing the jobs up in pay grades. And that means the number of pay grades actually is being reduced because there's only one top pay grade. There's a perception also that the system can be gamed. And it's also not a well-kept secret that people take advantage of a system. So a few points matter either way. So if you can write that job description or job reclassification request in a way that's going to get your employee more points, rather than using our merit program to get the person a raise because they're a top performer, oftentimes this system is being misused to reward performance where it should be in the performance management. So that's what you were talking about. When we bargain every year, we have, there's generally an across the board increase, and then employees progress in pay via steps. This is separate and above for that. Our contract talks about, if you move up a pay grade through this classification process and how that's treated. But this is above and beyond the Pay Act that you are authorizing every 2 years.
So I worked in this system for 8 years, and then I just was down in Pennsylvania, came out of there in 2019, worked in Pennsylvania system for 3.5 years. And they have an automated system. So, and everything's on schedule, it comes through. Everybody does their thing. If you want a reclassification, there's a way that you attempt to get that through the process. Everything flowed pretty well. It's a pain in the rear. I have to do it all the time, but it worked well, and I like that system. Here in Vermont, my staff was doing most of that work, and I was signing off at the end. So there has to be accountability along the end. So if you were to collapse some of those, do you use steps here?
So we have steps. Our pay grades do have steps. Yes.
So you could rearrange steps within a pay grade to
Yes.
account for the difference. We wouldn't have a huge new ask budget wise because you lumped nobody could go behind, so you had to put everybody into a class that paid more.
Right.
And that would be a huge cost to stay on the budget.
But what I'm hearing is that might have to be part of the negotiation, right?
It would have to be a part of the negotiation at the end because we can't we can't change our pay structure and pay movement without agreement with our unions.
But you should be able to work with those steps within any pay
Right.
grade and even,
Right.
hopefully even it out so it's not a huge new cost to the state.
That would be the goal. I mean, we would try to get something that is more manageable so that we can better tie our pay to the market, have employees move in a progression that makes sense. Right now, employees, it's 24 and a half years to get from step 1 up to step 15 in a certain pay grade. That's not something that I think newer employees are not always expecting, okay, I'm going to work here for 20 years and then I'll be paid the same as the person next to me over here that's doing the same job. So that's a situation which it's not because of this classification system. It's an issue with our pay charts, but it doesn't make sense to totally revamp our pay charts without fixing some of the underlying issues with the system.
So part of the problem, I've seen cases where we're trying to make a square peg into a round hole in terms of classification. Now, originally, everything, you had secretaries typing everything up, so there were a gazillion people all across state government doing the same job. Today, there's a lot more diversity in some of those, and putting a square peg in the hole, so you have enough diversity in your classification system to account for the differences that have come through time, the kinds of things that we're doing at a macro scale.
Right.
At a micro scale, when you do things stepwise or in another sense. But thinking about, so are you looking at the systems that other states have?
We are, that will be part of it too. And we've done some work over the years and looking at, we have, not every year, but we've submitted a couple of different reports to the legislature. And one of that, I believe, was in 2018 or 2019 that did a full look at what was happening across states. And we're also members of a national state compensation organization, which also looks at classification. So we're looking at what's happening in other states too. This ask is for a consultant to help us design a system that works for us. And then, so you starting kind of with the classification portion of it and then moving over to the compensation.
And then it'd be a software cost, or if you do it online, it's to be a software cost.
We expect that there would be software recommended to help us like create the job descriptions and do the classification. This does not have any software in it. We don't have any software now. So we're hopeful that there would be a tool, and with the vendors that we interviewed all had different tools that they showed us in the demonstrations. And they were just a tool that would help us even write a job description. Something as straightforward as that. They're not multi-million-dollar systems, but there's something that would be extremely helpful for not just us within the Department of Human Resources that does this work all the time, but for the departments that have to submit that information to write job descriptions. Because it's a lot of work.
Lynn and then Robin. Okay.
So this is not the entire cost, right? This is kind of where you were getting to. This is the first installment of some unknown future. We don't know until.
This is the cost to design and get prepared to design and implement the new classification system.
Yeah.
When you get to and that we will be able to do within this pot of money to get to a new compensation system and how those are tied.
Yeah.
To get to that point, then it's expected that we will need to first, I imagine how this would go would be, okay, this is how we've designed it. This is what we want to do. And the cost is X amount of money over this amount of time. I would get approval to bargain that. And let's say that was something that we would implement over 3 years. I'd get approval to do that. We negotiate with the VSCA. They get approval for that. And then we would have to figure out how to find the money for that. So I've seen in other states where they design a new system and get it in, but it's an implementation timeline over multiple years. That is more in states where their pay was abysmally low. Our state employees, while we're not always necessarily market-based, we're competitive in the marketplace. So I don't see something that dramatic with our workforce, because I think that one of the other things that we don't have is we don't actually have a compensation philosophy in Vermont. We try to match the market as much as we can, and we want to attract employees, but that's.
You want to be, so you don't have any, well, I mean, it's important to do this right, and it's opening a Pandora's box. So
Yeah.
the two parts are going to be, after this, is what is the software costs? And then what are the compensation costs as a result, and how are we going to ramp those up over time so we get to where we ought to be?
Right. And I think the software cost, I mean, what I've seen is the types of systems that we would likely use it would be like a bit of a budget up in my budget, but not something that you would be interested in hearing testimony on, probably, for the software piece of it. Some type of off-the-shelf version that people are using all over the place.
Okay, Tom?
Have you already gone through an RFP process?
Yes, we've gone for an RFP. We had, I believe, 7 responses. We had presentations for 4, and we've actually have a preferred vendor.
You just need money.
We need money, and we need to get our contract.
Just money.
We just need some money,
How
yeah.
long does this take? Let's just say
2 years.
2 years, okay.
I think the vendor is really proposing that they could do it in 12 to 18 months. I think it's going to take longer, just because the way we need to do it is we just need to engage so many stakeholders. We need to keep the legislature in the loop. Years back, when we were embarking on this journey, before we actually didn't meet with I think we met with representative of the Joint Fiscal Office to talk about the project and pay for legislators. We met with the judiciary. We've met with the unions. The unions actually, the VSEA participated and saw the presentations, as far as the vendor presentations as well. So we need to, they really do need to be a partner in this. And so just creating those relationships.
Based on the fact that you've got RFPs out there, and they have even narrowed it down a little bit, is the money they ask here for the expenditure, is that realistic?
Yes.
You're not going to be coming back next year and saying, oops, we need another $750,000 to
No.
finish this. Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Each year, there's over 1,000 classifications.
It's on the record. It's okay. We got it.
Each year, there's over 1,000 classifications, and over 80% are reallocated to a higher pay grade.
That's what makes me think, or gives me hope, that when you're done, the compensation isn't going to be through the roof, because it's already been
Right.
you're dealing with it over the last few
We're
years.
dealing with it in a different way.
Not the best way to deal with it, but it's being dealt with.
Yeah, the difference is, like, in our system that we have now, a few points can push somebody to a higher pay grade, and the common practice, instead of going through a merit award process where you can, if someone has outstanding performance, you can give them an additional step, which is like between 3 and 5% of their salary. You can do that every year and move somebody up in pay. But rather, classifications also often used as a reward for outstanding performance on the way the request for reclassification might be written, and just to try to squeeze out a few more points. Market data isn't used for our compensation structure. I mentioned earlier, we don't have a defined compensation philosophy. If you turn to page 8, the components of an effective compensation and classification plan. First we would have to have our market. What is our compensation philosophy? Are we market-based and then slightly below? with great benefits. Is that going to be our compensation philosophy? And that shouldn't take a lot of time, but we should be engaging stakeholders in that and come up with something that leadership is in agreement with. And then there's really 4 components there. There's the classification, which is the description of the work, the job evaluation, which is the measurement, and that's the Willis tool is the job evaluation tool. There's the pricing. So that's the pay structure and the value of the work, how the pay grade corresponds to that measurement. And then the pay delivery, that's what we have to bargain, that pay delivery, what the pay plans are, how we move between a pay grade. All of that is under the plan administration. Right now, that whole center box, all those 4 boxes are all kind of smushed into one. They really are smushed into one, the way the collective agreements are tied with our classification system, the way they're all tied together. They're acting as one big amorphous piece of meat inside that burger when there really should be multiple layers inside that burger that you see on that list.
Be hungry.
Yeah. So just a few more points. So what we want is to develop a new classification structure based on occupational groups, which I said earlier, in job families. Develop new job specifications and reduce the number of job classifications by 40%. Implement a modern approach to work measurement and position leveling. So we're leveling across state government and also vertically within the agency and department. And once you have that structure set up, it really shouldn't change that much. We shouldn't be having all of these reclassifications. You should be moving up to the next level, but that level should be set in there. Not, for administrative work, let's say, do you need administrator 1, 2, 3, supervisor 1, 2, 3, manager 1, 2, 3, director 1, how many levels do you need, right?
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's our block. She's blocking. So, I go back to past discussions about this and the reclassification process. And part of what I remember hearing is that in order to keep people, we needed to reclassify their positions, just because, and this was just on the heels of the pandemic. And that, and reclassification isn't necessarily a good tool, or it's the wrong tool to use to try to keep employees. There are other ways to do that.
It's being used as a de facto compensation system and a reward for performance. So you shouldn't, whether you're high performing in that job or low performing, your classification should be the same. Your classification should be the same, but you may be able to move pay faster, or if you're really great at the job that you might do, you might be able to work at the next level up. But so, yeah, so we're using our classification system as a de facto compensation system because our compensation system is also old. And we've been kind of chipping away at it. We have ways to address compensation. So while most employers are on the same pay chart, we have different ways we can address market conditions. So for a nurses, that the job classes that are nurses, they have a market factor. So nurses, even though the way it measures might be, and that pay grade might slot into like a $50,000 a year pay job. The market for that job might be $75,000 a year. So we'll tack on a 25%. I don't think I did that math right. A 50% market factor for a nurse, so we can hire them. So we have ways within at our department's disposal and within the collective bargaining agreements that we can address pay as well. I'm not saying that those are that we wouldn't want to change any of those things too, but we really do need some expertise to have us come in and do that, not only because we only know what we know in state government because this is the way we've done it. We also are going to need a lot of buy-in there, so we're going to need that expertise from a consultant to help us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that you want to share with us?
Yes, our goal is to implement a modern approach to work measurement and position leveling. And then to step 2, develop a modern compensation and pay structure, which considers internal equity and both external competitive. So both of those things. And then implement the administration of this new system according to best practices and appropriate collective bargaining agreements, both statutory and policy changes, and make sure we have the organization staffed appropriately for this. To date, I think I've kind of been through with that. I actually have already, on slide 10, I've really talked about what we've done already. And I think I've asked, the ask is, $1.575 million. I'm grateful that this project is in the budget and that we're at a point where I'm sitting in front of you making this ask. It's been something that we've been working on since I've been here 8 years, and it's been a project that we've been working on for quite a long time. So our goal is after secure funding and get a contract with our a vendor of choice, and then we'll be creating a project timeline with our milestones and goals. And next year, I would hope to be back here reporting on the progress we're making on this project.
I think it's in your vendor selection process.
Yeah.
You need their support at the end of the document as well.
And I do have some links in the back, which is a PowerPoint presentation from an earlier consultant that he presented to Senate GovOps several years back in 2021. And also the YouTube testimony on the conversation in that committee. We've been talking about this project in Senate GovOps also since I've been here. Over 8 years.
You know if House GovOps have looked at this?
They haven't. I haven't been in front of House GovOps yet, so.
Probably not taking a recommendation.
It's not.
I have to look in their letter to see if, in the letter I sent them to see. If that might not have. They might have said HR is. I have to go look at that sheet. I have a list of who we sent it to. Good question. Okay.
Any other? Ready?
Okay.
Commissioner, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take over here for just a second. You're all right with that?
Thank you.
I know you are. That's why I gotta take it back. So committee, we are gonna have our committee of conference at 3:30 across the way. Hoping to get a big chunk of stuff done this afternoon, and then we hope to finish up tomorrow morning and then sign tomorrow afternoon. That's kind of our hopeful timeline. That's the intent. So we're gonna need to meet and maybe with the folks from JFO to plot what we're gonna do the next time. So we will not meet right now, but I did check our website and we have at least 6 committee letters. So you can reread pardons from judiciary, but we have 5 others in addition. So I would suggest for some homework to start looking at those. Tomorrow, before I remembered that we had a committee of conference, or before Aaron reminded me, I thought, we can just start at 9, but we're not. We're gonna, because we have the committee of conference at 9. We'll start in here at 10. We have a doctor who's gonna come talk about SASH and Blueprint. It's healthcare morning. And then Nolan is gonna spend some time talking about FMAP and DISH. Disproportionate share of hospital payments. I don't, he's going to give us a very high level. He is not the deep expert on it, but he knows more than we do, as I have told him. So he can at least impart his knowledge on that. So we'll be doing that. And then depending upon what happens at 9:30, at 9 o'clock with the committee of conference, we'll figure out the other time, but we will spend some time on markup tomorrow. We won't stay really late tomorrow afternoon, but we will spend time on markup and doing that. So again, meetings with your folks, following up on whatever you need to, reading committee letters, all all those things. And if there's things that you feel like we can close, we'll talk about those tomorrow as well.
Are there any other committees that we need to have?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
like we did with conditions.
Yeah, we'll have Teresa in for health, human services. We don't have their letter yet. I could imagine maybe having Commerce in, depending upon what their letter is. Healthcare, but that'll have to be our first week that we're back, obviously, because we don't have that. As you're looking at letters, if you see, and probably, Rep. Holly from General Housing, because that's, I think there's gonna be a bit of money in there as well.
Yeah. Right.
So if you see other ones as you go along, let me know if you think that they ought to, we're not gonna have every committee come in. We just aren't, we don't need to. But if we have some key ones where we have questions on what they're asking about, we'd like to have them come in. Okay. All right, anything else anybody can think of? All right, thank you all very much.